Masaccio, a pioneer of the early Renaissance. Tommaso de Ser Giovanni de Samo, better known as Masaccio, was a trailblazer whose work influenced countless artworks. His pieces also combined countless innovations that emerged during the early Renaissance period, such as linear and aerial perspective, and the introduction of classical body types. Masaccio is considered the best painter of his time due to his skillful renditions of nature, lifelike figures, and their movements, and his ability to create a sense of three-dimensionality in his works. Moreover, his depiction of nude figures further distinguished him as a pioneering artist. Masaccio was a trendsetter. He did not get to live to see this, but he has influenced artists for centuries, and we will see that closer to the end of this presentation. Fun fact, Masaccio isn't his real name. Masaccio was given to him as it means Sloppy Tom or Tom the Clumsy. This was given to him because of his rough and spontaneous painting style. A not so fun fact, he died at the age of 28. Masaccio was considered the father of Renaissance painting. His career began in the early 1420s and ended with his death in 1428. Though his career was brief, he had a profound influence on artists for centuries. Not only that, but he was considered to have started the early Italian Renaissance, and he was one of the first to use techniques such as linear and aerial perspective, chiaroscuro, and depictions of the human form. Though his art was controversial at the time, he ended up having an enormous influence on later Renaissance artists, such as Michelangelo, Leonardo, and Raphael. Some themes and characteristics of Masaccio's work: he broke away from the traditional artistic norms, instead opting for depictions that were lifelike, true, and natural. His goal was to make Christian faith more tangible and relatable to ordinary people. Like many Renaissance artists, he focused on grand human dramas that highlighted the dignity of mankind. Through his use of simple forms, vivid figures with bold gestures and expressive faces, and three-dimensional perspective, Masaccio made his subjects feel almost tangible to the viewer. Let's take a look at the Trinity, painted in 1425 on fresco, and it is in the Santa Maria Novella in Florence, Italy. Masaccio is depicting the relationship between God the Father, Jesus Christ the Son, and the Holy Spirit. This artwork was one of the first paintings to demonstrate linear perspective in Renaissance art. Masaccio's use of this perspective creates a convincing illusion that what we are seeing here is not a wall, not the fresco, but an actual chapel, an actual space of a chapel. If you look closely here, you'll notice how the lines in the painting, especially those in the architecture above God the Father, these converge into a single line that point down here. This technique, called linear perspective, creates a real sense of depth and gives the Trinity a three-dimensionality feeling. This linear perspective was revolutionary at the time, because before Masaccio, before the Trinity, most art was from the medieval period, and a lot of art from the medieval period was flat, with no depiction of perspective. With the Trinity, Masaccio made the figures and the architecture appear much more lifelike, and that the space they were depicted in was real. This was a major turning point in how artists approach perspective, and it had a profound impact on the development of Renaissance art. This painting is a personal favorite of mine, and actually the reason why I wanted to do my presentation on Masaccio. This is the expulsion of Adam and Eve. It was painted between the years of 1424 to 1427 on fresco, and it sits in the Brancacci Chapel in Santa Maria del Carmine in Florence, Italy. This painting perfectly captures the transition between the medieval period and the Renaissance period. It blends naturalism with religious themes, but it also has a hint of secular perspective with the nude figures. During the early Renaissance, artists began focusing on naturalism, atmospheric perspective, and techniques like contrapposto. In this painting, Masaccio uses atmospheric perspective to create depth, making it feel as though Adam and Eve are right in front of the viewer, being cast out of Eden by the angel. What's striking here is how Masaccio uses contrapposto, a technique that is usually reserved for sculptures. He gives the figures dynamic poses, and these poses, you can almost feel the shame that Adam and Eve are feeling as they're being exiled. Also, Masaccio's attention to the natural human form is key here. Adam and Eve's proportions are realistic, and their emotional expressions are raw and believable, showing Masaccio's understanding of human anatomy and emotion in a way that hasn't been done before at this point. But beyond physical realism, Masaccio's work tells a profound story about sin, free will, and the consequences of disobedience. You can truly feel the pain of Adam and Eve, with their body language speaking volumes. Adam covers his face in shame, Eve covers her genitals, both of them expressing the deep sense of shame that they are likely experiencing for the first time in their lives. Through this, Masaccio brings a biblical story to life in a way that's deeply human and relatable. Masaccio's work represents a monumental shift in the history of art. His use of linear perspective, naturalism, and emotional depth not only defined him as a pioneer of the early Renaissance period, but created a path for many artists to follow. With pieces like the Trinity and the expulsion of Adam and Eve, Masaccio displays his mastery of technique and his deep understanding of the human experience, blending religious themes with a powerful, relatable sense of realism. Masaccio's impact is undeniable, and his works continue to influence art to this day, such as contemporary artist Kenyon Wiley. Wiley, known for his vibrant portraits of people of color, echoes Masaccio's focus on realistic proportions, dynamic poses, and the human experience. While Wiley's works are more rooted in the modern world, his attention to the physical and emotional depth of his subjects connects directly to Masaccio's influence. Just as Masaccio broke new grounds in the early Renaissance, Wiley continues to push boundaries, using the same techniques to create a more inclusive and relatable form of realism today. Through artists like these, Masaccio's legacy lives on, reminding us that art is not just about representing the divine, but also about expressing the human experience.